Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast.
Back again. I was watching a movie and that's like popped up to my head. I was like, I'm going to use that. It was like in Pitch Perfect. Yes, I've watched Pitch Perfect. He's like, I am back again.
Well, I don't even know where to start after that one.
Yep. We always say this isn't scripted.
This is not scripted.
I just pulled that out of nowhere.
Well, why don't you jump in since you're pulling things out of nowhere?
Yeah, we wanted to talk about today the epidemic of underinvestment in team. So we find that there's a lot of doctors and practices out there that aren't doing enough for their team. So I want you to elaborate on enough, what they should be doing, and like what's going on. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say it's first and primarily an underinvestment in attracting team and getting the team and hiring the team. It's interesting. So I'll have an office that's doing $8 million in revenue, and yet I'll say to them, you really need someone to help out with your operations, and they'll say, well, what does something like that cost? I say, well, I mean, for the size of your practice, it's probably going to cost easily 110. What?
What do you mean?
No. Can I pay $45,000?
Yeah.
Like, no, you can't pay $45,000.
I trained him 3 years ago.
And it's like, but then what happens is, this is the crazy part. So every single time, okay, and I'm all good about allowing people to rise up through the ranks, but 100% of the time they come back and go, no, we took Susie. I know last week she was the sterilization tech, but now she's going to run our 4 locations. Like, we're going to train her up for that. And so
we're
I'm like,
put her in an in-house program.
And we figured we could move her from 35 to 45 and she'd be happy. And so I'm like, this is the craziest. Okay, this is like the same thing about like not opening Fridays, not investing in marketing. It's like any other company, right? Any other industry knows that you got to invest in people. That people are the greatest asset you have in this industry, who's controlled by damn CPAs who told them don't invest in anything and don't mess up with your ratios. You already have a 30% margin without trying. Come on. And so what ends up happening is when you start, and by the way, this is every practice, and I'm not talking about the person doing 400 grand. I'm talking about the person doing 14 million. It's still the same thing. It's still when you go back and say to somebody in the dental world that you need to invest in your team. Because if you look, I was reading, I do this thing where sometimes I'll go back and I'll read some of the business books, and whether it's Good to Great or Lean Startup or, Scaling Up and all these books. And there's one commonality if you read them all, and that's great organizations invest in great people. They're willing to invest in great. Here's the interesting part. Somebody will spend $140,000 for a CEREC and let the damn thing sit in the corner and do nothing with it, but the phones are ringing off the hook and they don't want to spend an extra $14 an hour for someone to pick up the phone. And so then you go back into like, this is like the silliness of the industry. I'm sorry guys. I mean, if I'm calling it out, I'm calling it out because it's truth. It's an epidemic of underinvestment. I was talking to, let me give an example. So I was talking to this doctor the other day and I said, look, when I'm sitting across from you, I'm looking at your practice as if I was an investor. Yeah. And if I'm private equity, for instance, and I say, hey, I'm going to go build a $100 million DSO. And I said, here's $10 million. What do you think the first thing I would want you to do with my $10 million is? Hire somebody who could run the damn show. That would be the number one thing.
Make sure you have the infrastructure from a team.
You would hire C-suite first. The first thing you would do, if I gave you my $10 million, you would say, we need an operations person to run it. Yeah. Because while I know dentistry, I don't know operations. Yeah. And the first thing I would want you to do with my $10 million, and by the way, if you came back to me with my $10 million and you said, hey, we're dropping $175,000 on this person who's going to run the whole operation, I'd say, okay, great, perfect.
Sounds great.
Great. Tell me about them, Yeah. And so then we know that when we get to the right talent, and this is why that doctors end up, it's like this idea. I was reading this last night. I'm nerdy enough to read business books into the night, but
Of course.
that's my downtime. So I was reading this book, and it was talking about this idea of, I think I've lost my train of thought. I get like,
You need to get back in the headspace.
Get
Let me
back
lean
in-
back
let me
here.
lean back, right?
I picture you with like one of those pipes. You're like,
oh yeah, with the like
the
yeah,
old
like,
school
the-
wood pipes.
with glasses, right? My pipe and
And a scarf inside.
Kind
You're
of
like,
a scarf, right?
leather chair.
Leather chair. I've got the
Yeah.
leather chair, right?
Bookshelf,
With glasses.
yeah.
That's right. And you got to sit back in your study. We don't.
Right.
We call it the study. I retire to the study. I
Yeah,
think you have to
to the
use that
study, yeah.
terminology. I retired to my study. I retired to my study later
to
tonight.
read my business
I
book.
packed my to read my business book. What the hell are we talking about? So,
You're reading a business book.
All right.
What book?
all right, what book?
I'm in the French mindset now.
The book, the bibliothèque. All right, so seriously, when we start looking at investment in team, and we start actually looking at saying, look, great organizations invest in the people that help grow it. That in fact, if you study great organizations, and I don't care whether it's Apple, you want to sit in the room. And this is the thing that never, and I say never, ever, is that enough evers? Ever happens in dentistry. You know, Ronald Reagan, they said, was good at this. You want to wake up in the room eventually and say, everyone in this room is smarter than I am.
Yeah.
Like everyone in this room is smarter than I am. And that's how you build, right, great organizations, is that you start hiring really great people that are highly talented. And those people, remember abundance versus scarcity, if you listen to like 40 episodes ago, like that you hire people who can critically think and do not need you to weigh in on every darn decision in the practice, that can help it grow, that can make decisions, that honestly you're in their way.
Yeah.
That's the best thing. And I know that's leaving control, but look, you know, you got to practice this doing 45% profit margin. They're afraid to invest in talent. It is the most absurd thing, and it's like,
I think it's like a two-part thing too when you break this down. Like we get constantly, we have doctors that are like, I can't find the right team members, and we ask them what they're doing, and they say, I might have asked my team if they knew anybody. I think investing in finding the talent too is a huge missing piece in dentistry, because if you tell someone to go use a recruiting firm and it's going to cost $2,000 to go find somebody, they're going to laugh at you and say, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep waiting it out. Someone eventually is going to come.
Eventually will come.
And then we'll get the call 3 months later and say, yeah, that person wasn't quite the right fit. And we're like, well, and then I'll get the call and say,
time and energy. Can you find me somebody? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not a staffing company. Finding great people is hard. It's never not going to be hard. But here's the question: is time? You're right. From a time perspective, do you have the time to go find the right person? I had a doctor ask me the other day. It was like, hey, how do I find this person? I said, pay someone. Like, call up a staffing agency.
Yeah.
You know, he wanted someone who's non-dental. I said, call up a staffing agency. Ask them, hey, this is what I'm looking for. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think the dentistry is kind of stuck in that model of, we have to have someone that has the dental experience. Like, if you look at any organization in the entire country, most of the time, the people they hire don't have experience in that industry. They teach them.
That's right.
Like, they bring them in
Well, it's a widget.
and they teach them.
It's a widget.
Yeah. And the same thing could be used in dentistry. Like, go hire a top-notch company to find you someone that's really good, and then teach them dentistry.
But it's not even, I remember, I've consulted for many companies outside of dentistry, and I can tell you the first thing about their product, because it really didn't matter. What I mean by that is, sure, I understood their product enough to know what was in the warehouse, but it didn't matter. I mean, the numbers are the same, we have the same system, we still have to, all the same principles apply. It doesn't matter whether you're dental or not. But being the fact that all principles apply, then we would have to argue then that's the difference. Like, you won't hire good people to run the organization. And it's because of the fact that there's a mindset that paying $55,000 for somebody is your top bracket that you would ever pay for somebody. And there are times when you go, look, what am I looking for? What is the talent I'm looking for? And by the way, people will ask me, so what should this person look like? And I'll start talking to them. They'll go, well, what would I pay that person? And as soon as I crack the six-figure number, their head literally pops backwards and their eyes bug out. And they're like, what?
Yeah, what do you mean?
And I'm like, you're taking home $52,000 a month.
Yeah. I'm like, would you rather have a 30% profit margin and have all the headaches, or a 15% profit margin and have no headaches?
I mean, I think that when we look at, this is what stops growth and scalability.
Yeah.
Because the stress of dealing with all the headaches, the stress of dealing with all the fires, the stress of not knowing how to grow and scale, the stress of human resource management, the stress of financial worries, the stress of all these things, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And there's insourcing and outsourcing. I think, one thing that I was kind of really paying attention to this last night, even for our, we are a consulting firm, right? So we do consulting and accounting and business leadership and, team training, and we do a lot of things. But I was reading in this book last night, and this, by the way, is not a dental book. It was just talking about that great organizations, one of the key factors is they invest in coaching. They invest in training, that they invest in consulting. They invest, all great organizations do that. So it's common to all great organizations. And by the way, listening to this, make it a study. Make great businesses a study. And if you study great business, you understand that they invest in great team, that they have a leadership team, they have other people who can make decisions, that they surround themselves by intelligence, critical thinking skills. They're surrounded by critical thinking skills. When they don't have all the answers, they go hire consultants. They hire coaching. Some of our clients that work with 4 consulting firms simultaneously. It's fine. I've got a guy right now, 2 guys that came in recently, paid me quite a bit per hour, and they ultimately, it's kind of interesting, they've got like 2 other consulting firms, and they were like, but no one knows what Eric knows about this. So and so this idea of like, well, I'm not going to invest in team. I'm not going to invest. You don't have all the answers, and so there's so many things that you need to wrap yourself in. Isn't it crazy that they're so successful? And the most successful people make the investment. So something you need to know from now until you sell your practice. Calm down, Eric. Calm down.
I mean, I think it goes down to, you always say, and you tell, your leaders level doctors, you really harp on this concept that you need to start treating your practice not as an income stream, but as an asset.
That's right.
And if you approach it as an asset, you'll bring on the team because the team is going to help you grow that asset. It might affect your income at the time, but at the end of the day, you have a business that you could potentially sell for or keep and put scalability in place that ultimately is going to pay you more than what you're paying yourself now. But how do you do that?
Valuation always matters.
Yeah. So I think when you talk about, like, when we say, investing in your team and bringing on the right talent and paying people to find the right talent, they always look at it, well, that's going to affect my income, instead of looking at it like, how is this going to affect my asset and how is it going to grow it?
Well, because it's an investment.
Yeah.
And you're investing in growing the valuation of the asset. Now,
a Cyric's not going to grow your valuation significantly.
It's not. No, because you're trading, it's not. I think when we go back and look at it, we say, now, we look at income and revenue and valuation, and maybe it is increasing income, but if you want to increase the income, you have to make the investment. Maybe it is increasing revenue so you can have scalability. If you want to increase revenue, you have to make the investment. Maybe it is valuation because you ultimately want to sell, or you have an exit strategy that's coming up, then you need to make an investment. So when we don't invest in talent, and when I say that, internal and external, when we don't invest, the biggest cap on an organization is its talent. That's the biggest organizational ceiling. The biggest cap is its talent, the people that are within the organization. Your biggest cap for most people listening to this is you.
Yeah.
It really is. It's the doctor that hasn't increased their acumen or hasn't continued to increase their knowledge base. But then it's on top of that. So you have to invest inside the organization. Now, understand, if you're trying to be an $800,000 practice for the rest of your life and sell it off, okay, fine. Then this conversation doesn't pertain to you. Okay, you're out. Do you? Okay, go put money in your 401k and get on your fixed income and whatever.
You'll be fine.
But if you're trying to build an organization of significance that's scalable and then it can run without you, which I'm having the conversation of, and that's what the conversation we're having. Well, and if you want to get out of the elementary of business. And if you go study, look, by the way, if you listen to this podcast, I don't know if I agree with them, go read some damn business books then.
Yeah.
They'll all say the same thing. Every business book, I'm not talking about the great business books, the top 10. Well, I'll tell you the same thing. You invest in talent, you invest in organizational health,
Yep.
You invest in consulting and coaching and training, and you go get the answers if you don't have them. And so I call it an epidemic because I see it everywhere, that it's like, as soon as I start telling a doctor, I mean, and I'm serious about this, it can be $8.5 million practice. There can be $6 million in the checking account. And literally when I say, hey, you need to pay $8,000 a month for somebody, they go, okay, not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. you go. Because I think I can get Susie, the sterilization tech, trained up to be the operations lead. And I go, what?
Why?
What?
Did you even have a conversation with Susie if she wanted to do that?
And then on top of that, do you have the training to train her up to be the person that you really truly need? And this is what ends up happening and why people stop growing and scaling. They stop, like I said, go back to my example again. If I gave you $10 million tomorrow, you better be hiring talent. That better be the first thing you do. If you start telling me the first thing you're doing is hiring doctors, I want my money back.
Yeah.
The first thing you should be done, because it's not, I can replace doctors. No offense to anybody. I mean, yes, I know some people can do much more faster work and not everyone produces the same. I'm not disrespecting anyone, by the way. I don't mean it disrespectfully. I mean that you have to look at it objectively like an investor and say, what's going to be more difficult is for me to find someone to run this show. That's what's going to be more difficult. And so the first step I want you to do is fill out the C-suite. I want you to go find the people who ultimately are going to run this business and then go get the doctors. So then what we do is we go, okay, well, if that's true, and by the way, same thing for you. If I give you $10 million and I say go build a DSO for me, that's probably what you would do first. You would go hire people to run it because you're like, because here's what you would say.
Go find
I
the core
don't
talent.
know how to run a $100 million DSO, so I'm going to go hire somebody. Well, that's organizational ceiling. So then if you know that you don't have the talent to get to the next place, well, then wouldn't it make sense for you to make the investment and go get it? Right now with PPP, doctors are sitting on the highest level of cash that they've ever set in that I can remember. And yet they won't make the investment. And they'll just burn through that cash and it will disappear. Yeah. And I think I'm probably being a little tough today. I don't know. I felt really happy walking in. Maybe I'm being tough today because it's like, it's one of those things where you want to shake somebody because you're just like, wake the I caught myself. Wake up and wake up and realize, quit watching the damn doctor growing at 2.5% who doesn't know what the hell they're doing and watching what they're doing. Stop it. If you want to go learn, then find out how to build a great organization. Fine. Watch the DSOs. Watch what they're doing. What do you think they're doing? They're going to hire the C-suite first. When you look at your own organization, stop being cheap. Invest in the talent, invest in the consulting, invest in the training, or you're doomed to hit an organizational ceiling, get frustrated, stressed out, and not sure how to get over the hump. And you will be stuck there, and you will eventually sell this thing off because someone's going to walk up with a check and you're going to say, oh, hell with it, I'll take the check. What you have to do is right now is say, who can I hire who's smarter than I am? At least in this regard, right? Business acumen regard. Maybe they might not be intellectually as smart as you, or acumen or intelligence wise. But look, hire somebody who knows, and that's why. But you can't. That's not even good enough. You have to have external people and internal people to end up doing this. Great organizations. Why do you think organizations like KPMG, Ernst & Young, these companies? Why do you think they call them the Big Four? Why? Because great organizations, the Coca-Colas of the world, the Home Depots of the world, the Apples of the world are also paying. You're talking about companies that get the top talent, Ivy League talent of the entire world, by the way, and still are hiring outside people to look at, say, hey, are we doing all this right? Can you take a look at what we're doing? Because you have to have both. You have to have an external team looking at what you're doing and an internal team looking at what you're doing. And then you got to mesh this all together if you truly want to grow and scale. And so when I say an epidemic of underinvestment, yes, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to the person listening to this right now who's afraid to invest in somebody. And so don't go ask your accountant if you should hire somebody talented. They're going to tell you no.
Yeah, they're going to say no.
Don't. You have to understand. And then here we go. Ready? Here's the next question, right? Eric, what does this person look like? I don't know, it's coming, right?
Every time.
It's not true you don't know that answer. That is not freaking true.
You know.
You know what you're looking for. Well, can you give me a job description for this person? No, because you know what I'm talking. You know who I'm talking about.
What do you need them to do?
So I don't.
Go
right?
find that person.
Go find that person.
That's
like,
it.
You
It's
know,
not any more complicated. Sometimes dentists, I find, try to overcomplicate the little things. Maybe because they've done it wrong in the past and it's come to bite them or whatsoever. But don't overcomplicate it. What position do you need? Go find that person. Like,
I watched. So I went to an event one time, and it was this guy kept saying he didn't have the answers, didn't have the answers, and the speaker started pressing him, and finally was like, "Give me the answer."
Yeah.
And the guy was like, "This is what you do." It's like, I knew you had it the whole time. It's like, you know what the answer is.
Yeah.
And the truth is we avoid it. We try to create steps and hurdles in our way, and we can give ourselves an excuse. Well, I was going to hire that person, but I didn't know exactly what they look like, and I was afraid to make a mistake. Here's the thing. Most people listening to this have hired an associate that didn't work out. 6-figure employee, didn't work out. Sorry. I mean, it happens. Most people listening to this have made a hire that just didn't work.
Yeah.
That's the nature. Now, there's a lot of testing that you can do to try to see if this person fits certain criteria, really behavior. You can call up their past. You can look at their resumes. You can look. Human resource management is a complete study, right? I mean, hiring great people is an art form, and it's hard work, and but that's no excuse not to actually do it. The problem is most doctors say, I'll hire this person.
Yeah.
Who on your team can help? Is there anyone else? Can you hire an external firm? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, fine, reach out to me. But I'll give you more specifics, but it doesn't matter whether it's the hygienist, it doesn't matter if it's the assistant, it doesn't matter if it's the operations lead.
Yeah.
Invest. One of the stories I share often is when we started a dental practice, that a young lady came, this is like the first argument or whatever you want to call it we had. And I remember being told, hey, we can't spend that much for somebody. And I remember saying, we have to.
Yeah.
And it was the most we'd ever paid for a dental assistant, ever.
Yeah.
And we couldn't even imagine paying that much. It was almost like twice what we were paying for an assistant. She changed the entire culture. The amount of business she drove into that organization was unbelievable. The way was worth every darn penny, but we had to pay for it. And so when we get to our businesses, when we start to actually get like what's holding us back, if you're listening to this and you're being honest with yourself, if you're being honest, what's holding this organization back is you.
Yeah.
And why are you holding it back? It's talent. So what ends up happening is talent is what's holding your organization back. I'm sorry, it just is. And at every level, you have to invest in consulting, you have to invest in training, you have to invest in advisory work, you have to invest to get the answers.
Yeah.
You don't have to know it all, by the way. You're not supposed to. You go seek advice. That's what you do. And if you think you have all the answers and you'll just find the cheap way out, well, then you'll get the cheap result. I mean, it's like there's like always like this LinkedIn one that was like, it's like the guy who drives the horse. You know what I'm talking about? The one that's like you pay for what you get what you pay for, right? Really good people are really expensive. I'm really expensive. I'm okay with that, and because you're going to get a different result. And so then we go back to the same thing with internal. Look, you get what you pay for. If you want to hire someone who's uneducated, if you want to hire someone who has no business acumen, if you don't know all the answers, how are you going to train them up to be the person that you want them to be? And so I think this idea is you have to make an investment. It's called an investment. It's not called a guarantee.
Yeah.
It's an investment because the idea is that there's going to be a return for that investment. And sometimes things will work out and sometimes they won't. But you still have to do it. You still have to make the decisions. And so I call it an epidemic because the fact that it's like a disease and it has spread through the dental industry forever. And it's one that is so difficult to eradicate. It's so difficult to eradicate small business thinking, small-minded thinking in dental offices to get people to realize that to get where you want to go, you've got to have the team. And if you don't have the team, you can't. No.
You're going to be stuck.
You can't get there. You won't get there. You're wasting your time, and you might as well turn it into an income stream because that's what you have.
Yep.
If you want to have an asset, you have the right team.
Yep.
I felt like I was a.
Did you not hit record?
I felt like today we had, I get pumped up about the subject. So I get pumped up about the subject, and I'm okay with that. I get pumped up about it. And I think that when I get pumped up about it, it's because of the fact that I care. It's when you hear a podcast like this and you hear people, you might hear me get kind of pumped up or whatever, and I might sound jerky, and you might even take some offense to what I say, right? But when you have someone who cares, which I do, when that happens, what you'll find is that when people care, they'll tell you the truth. When people actually give a damn, they'll be honest with you. They'll tell you the truth. I always tell people all the time, like, I don't get paid to make you happy. I get paid to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might not like the truth, but it's the truth, and that's what you should get. And so in a podcast like this where I get pumped up, it's like I'm trying to shake you a little bit. And if I made you a little frustrated or you felt that then good. Then good. Then it probably worked what I was trying to get accomplished, which is to wake you up a little bit. Not because I don't care, but because I do. And because I care about every single person listening to this podcast, I'm telling you, if you want to beat your competition, if you want to dominate the industry, if you want to dominate your area, if you want to be the best of the best, I'm giving you the darn formula.
Yeah.
Now, whether you take it or not is a whole other thing, right? I mean, give you the pill, but if you don't swallow it, it's not really going to matter. So I thank everyone for listening, but I want you to take this to heart. I want you to look at your organization. I want you to look at where you're capped at. Imagine if you had the team that was able to truly grow this organization. And what would that team look like? And how would that change things?
Love it.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for continuing to share the message. I'm so humbled by the results we've had. It's amazing really what's happening in this podcast. Our numbers are going through the roof, and so someone was telling me the other day, it's like I was driving down the road and watching your YouTube. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Like I discourage that. So I discourage that.
Yeah.
That's
disclaimer:
actually
do not watch while you're in the car.
I discourage watching YouTube and driving, but they were telling me they were like, I was driving down the road and watching your YouTube channll. That's when you listen to you got to reverse.
But you told me to. No.
So look. Make sure make sure you take this stuff and put it into action. I appreciate you spending this time with us. Like it, share it, send it. It's abundance mentality. Don't be afraid to share it with a friend because you're afraid somebody else is going to do well. There's enough opportunity for everyone. Guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.